Here we go. Okay, can you see that here? So where the cursor is at the beginning of the line, the Mishnah has said, "V'she'ena gavoa esrim tefachim." Sorry, asara tefachim. So we've talked about the maximum height for a sukkah being 20 amas. Says the Mishnah, a sukkah which is less than 10 tefachim is possible, is no good. Okay, 10 tefachim, not very tall. We're talking about roughly about 80 centimeters. We saw previously the reason given is because it is a dira surucha. It is an unpleasant dwelling. It's too unpleasant to be that cramped in to such a sukkah, and therefore a person, just as a person wouldn't be expected to stay in their house if it was unpleasant, so too it wouldn't be expected to dwell in their sukkah if it's unpleasant, and therefore, since it starts off being unfeasible, unsuitable to be used as a sukkah, therefore it's possible from the outset. So we've assumed that 10 tefachim, we've given the reason why 10 tefachim is possible is because it's unpleasant to be that cramped in. And it says Gemara, however, it says Gemara now, Gemara asks, where do we know? What is the reason why we set the limit as a minimum of 10 tefachim? Why is that the deciding factor? Where do we learn 10 tefachim from? And if you look at the Tosfos on the right-hand side, right at the bottom of the page, here, Asara, says Tosfos, Asara tefachim, where do we know that the mechitzas, the walls of a sukkah, have to be a minimum of 10 tefachim? Says Tosfos, actually, the Gemara here is more at stake than just for a sukkah. We're talking about here the very definition of a mechitza, of a wall, of a partition, that it has to be 10 tefachim, and that will have implications for Shabbos as well when it comes to creating a ruvin, the need for there to be walls of at least a minimum of 10 tefachim. So this is really the source text now of where the requirement of walls to be a minimum of 10 tefachim comes from. So says the Gemara, Minalan, where do we know that from in the Torah? So says the Gemara, Itma, Rav Rabbi Chanina Rabbi Yochanan Rav Chaviva Masnu B'Kulei Seder Moed Ki Kol Hayg Zuga Chalufei Rabbi Yochanan U'Ma'elei Rabbi Yonasan. So before we say what the source is, Gemara says that it was taught said by Rav and Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Chaviva. However, says Gemara, wherever you find in Seder Moed, so in the section of Gemara, which includes Shabbos and Sukkah, whenever you have these sets, and one of them included is Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yochanan is removed and is inserted instead with Rabbi Yonasan. You can understand why that would have got mixed up between Yochanan and Yonasan. So it's just a little footnote really to tell us that actually she said Rabbi Yonasan and Rabbi Yochanan. However, the answer the Gemara gives now is, how do we learn it? Aron Tisha v'Kaporis Tefach. The Aron HaKodesh, which was in the Beis HaMikdash, the Mishkan and the Beis HaMikdash, was 9 tefachim high. The Kapores and its cover, its lid, was a tefach. So 9 tefachim plus 1 is 10. Just if I just stop this sharing and show you what we're talking about. Very quickly, I find the picture. I didn't attempt to draw this myself. Much easier to find online. Okay, here we go. You see over here? That's the Aron HaKodesh. These are the staves that always have to be kept in it permanently. So the height of the Aron was 9 tefachim. And the cover, this lid, its height was 1 tefach. Kruvim, the cherub sits on top. We'll see the Miskeres has got a border, a rim around it, but the lid itself is 1 tefach high. Okay, it's about 8 centimeters high. So we've got 9 tefachim and 1, which makes 10, obviously. Okay, So we'll see how that then leads us to mechitzas. Let's just go back to the Gemara. Okay. So says the Gemara, Aaron Tisha v'kaporis tefach, penultimate line, Harikan Asara. That gives us 10. Ukasiv. And so how do we know that therefore a mechitza, a wall or a domain was considered to be that of 10 tefachim? Says the Gemara, because it says apostle, Hashem says in Shemos, V'noadati lecha sham, v'dibati techam me'al kapores. God says, I will meet you, so to speak, there, meaning my presence will be felt on top of the Aron HaKodesh, and I will speak to you from upon the Kapores, the cover. So look at Rashi, bottom line of Rashi, right at the bottom of the Gemara, middle of the line. Aron Tisha, Gavoa. The height of the Aron was 9 tefachim. V'ama, the Pasuk actually says, the Pasuk says, V'ama v'chetzi kol masa. It should be an amma and a half. Now an amma is 6 tefachim, half an amma is 3 tefachim, and therefore it's 9. V'ama b'shisha tefachim, says Rashi, amma is 6 tefachim. So an amma and a half is 9 tefachim, plus the 1 tefach of the cover, that gives us 10 tefachim. Hashem says, I will speak to you from upon the kapores, the cover. We turn over to the next daf. So hey on with the other right at the top. Okay, says the Gemara. But Tanya, so we know that the Hashem spoke to the Jewish people from above on top of the Aron Kodesh cover. But Tanya, says the Gemara, but Tanya Rabbi Yossi Omer, so the Rabbi Yossi said, the truth is, Hashem never descended lower than 10 tefachim, meaning he never came lower than the top of the Aron. Nor did Moshe or Eliyahu Hanavi ascend to the heavens, to the heights. Shneimah, as the Apostle says, a famous Apostle in Tehillim, Hashemayim Shamayim LaHashem, V'ha'aretz Nasan Livnei Adam. The heavens, they are God's heavens, and the earth he gave to human beings. So we see, the Gemara is saying, based on that Apostle and the fact on the dimensions of the Aron HaKodesh, and the fact that Hashem speaks from the top of the Aron HaKodesh, the Kaporos, that there is clear division between the upper and lower worlds. Human beings were given the lower world, anything from 10 tefachim and downwards. Hashem dwells in the upper realms, that's anything from 10 tefachim and above. Hashem never descends lower than that. He speaks from Allah Kapores, from the top of the cover. Moshe and Aaron never went up any higher than that. Look at Rashi, top right-hand corner.
Rabbi, does that mean that Hashem's not everywhere?
Good question, Johnny. Yeah, it's a good question. Let's just see the way the Gemara plays out slightly. It is a good question. It would appear from the Gemara, yeah, everywhere except for less than below 10 tefachim.
I'm sure there's a song in the children's service that I've heard once or twice.
There
Rabbi.
is.
You're now upsetting me and my children too. No pressure, Rabbi.
Okay, thank you, Johnny. I said let's just work through this bit of Gemara. We'll come back to that question. It says Rashi, top right-hand corner. V'tanya me'olam lo yadu shechina lamata. It's taught, according to Rabbi Yossi, that Hashem never descends lower than 10 tefachim. The Kara Ksiv, as the Apostle says, the al kapores yarad. It says that Hashem descends onto the kapores, the lid of the Aron Kodesh. Shema menav, we confirm this. Lemala me'asara mitzvah rishusa. This is really Rashi start bringing it back. Johnny, first you say this is a bit of agadatus. It's non-halachic material here, but we're using it in order to learn a halachic point, which is that Hashem doesn't descend lower than 10. So above 10 is a completely different reshus. There's the top of the kapores, the top of the Aron Kodesh, marks the dividing line between one domain and the other. Heavens, Hashem's domain is anywhere above there, whereas Human domain is anywhere below there, and the two don't mix. Says the Gemara. Gemara's going to challenge that. What do you mean? What do you mean Hashem never descends lower than that, and Moshe Rabbeinu never ascended higher than that? Go back in the Gemara. Actually, just 1 second. Let's just see. There's a Ritva on this. Says the Ritva. Yeah. So Lo Yardu Shechina Lamata. So Rabbi Yossi said the divine presence never descends lower than 10 tefachim. Perish v'kiven Shlo Yardu Shechina Lamata. Since the divine presence, the Shechina doesn't descend lower than that. V'ashechu dira ala kapores, and we find that it dwells on the ark cover. Shema'ina d'chol shegurua asara rishus acheresu. Therefore, we find that anything above 10 tefachim is a different rishus. So, for purposes of us, what we were trying to say is, why is a sukkah that's less than 10 tefachim not considered to be a sukkah? Because the walls aren't considered to be walls. Once you've got 10 tefachim, though, that is considered to be a domain in its own right, an entity in its own right. So called shigavo asara rishus acheresu. Anything which is 10 tefachim is a domain in its own right. How can we bring, to ask Ritva, how can we bring a proof to a Torah law that the sukkah has to have 10 tefachim high? Midin Rabbi Yossi, from this ruling of Rabbi Yossi, Ke'ilu heim min hakasuv or lacham Sinai. Either it comes from a posuk, or it comes halakha Moshe Sinai, or it was a halakha that was transmitted to Moshe Mount Sinai. Shelo yarada shechina mata, the divine presence doesn't come any lower than that. Yerushalmi maisi da b'ger Shava. The Yerushalmi derives it from a Gezer Shava, a connection between two pasukim. Ne'emar Khan, it says in one place, Dibur v'noadati lecha sham v'dibarti. It says in one place, the pasuk we saw, Hashem says, I will meet you and I will speak to you. V'ne'emar lahalan, and it says in another pasuk, later in Shemos chapter 20, verse 22, Ki min hashamayim dibarti imachem. I will speak to you from heaven. Ma dibur lahalan rishus acheres, afkan dibur rishus acheres. Just as in one place when Hashem says, I will speak to you from the heavens, that's clearly a different domain to earth. So too when Hashem says, I will speak to you from the top of the ark cover, that also is considered to be a different domain. And therefore we see that 10 tefachim is the defining measurement of domains. Once you reach 10 tefachim, you reach into a new domain. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah, so is it, back to my question, is it anthropomorphic?
We haven't finished yet, Johnny. Hold on there.
Sorry.
Because the Gemara is now going to challenge that. Yeah? We've made an assertion, according to Rabbi Yossi, that Hashem never descends lower than 10 tefachim. And from that we can derive, therefore, that 10 tefachim is considered to be a domain in its own right. Says the Gemara on the fourth line, V'lo yada shechina lemata. So as the divine presence not to descend any lower than that, surely we have a pasuk in it says in Shemos, Vayered Hashem al Har Sinai. Hashem descended onto Mount Sinai, literally onto the mountain, which is what? Ground zero. It's zero tefachim. It's the ground level. Yeah. So that would appear to contradict what Rabbi Yossi is saying, that he doesn't descend any lower than 10. Notice is that Hashem came right down onto the mountain at ground level. Answers the Gemara, Lemala me'asara tefachim. Yeah, when it said that, what it meant was Hashem descended, but still remained above 10 tefachim. So it didn't come completely down onto the mountain, remained 10 tefachim, about 80 centimeters off the top of the mountain. You see Rashi, second line of Rashi at the end of the line, the Mala me'esrim tefachim, says Rashi, tirutzahu. This is now, that's an answer to the previous challenge. Okay, so we still see that Hashem doesn't descend lower than 10 tefachim. Says Morg has another go, it persists and says, no, surely there's another passage that says in Zechariah, talks about in the times of Mashiach, it says, V'amdu raglav Bayomahu, in those days, on that day, meaning the day when Mashiach comes, yeah. Where are we? On that day, his legs will stand al har zaytim on the Mount of Olives. So what does that seem to suggest? Yes, only quite rightly, an anthropomorphic suggestion. But Hashem has legs, can be achol, so to speak. But those figurative legs that Hashem has will stand on Mount of Olives. So you can't suggest, well, they're hovering 10 tefachim off Mount of Olives. That's possible to say he's actually standing on the mountain, meaning at ground level. So says the Gemara, lemala me'asara tefachim. No, it still means he's hovering, still 10 tefachim off the ground. Doesn't reach all the way to the ground. Okay. So, Johnny, back to your question then. So when we say Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is truly everywhere, up, down, down. What do we mean by down, down?
In us.
Sorry?
In us.
Sorry?
In us. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
That Hashem's in us, maybe? Like
in us.
In us.
Okay.
Sorry.
Very nice. But based on what we just said. When we say Hashem is everywhere, we say yes, everywhere above 10 tefachim. Yeah. So you'll find Hashem anywhere above 80 centimeters off the ground. Okay?
It seems slightly counterintuitive to the idea that, Hashem is omnipotent, omnipresent. He can be absolutely everywhere, in all places, at all times, apart from a 10 tefachim covering of the surface of the earth. And then what, he exists below that 10 tefachim inside the earth as well? It seems an odd sort of exclusion zone.
I think what we're suggesting is, again, how we should understand this, I'm not sure. What we're not suggesting that Hashem couldn't descend that lower than that. What we're saying is that he gave earth to human beings. He gave the world to human beings, the physical world to human beings. That's not a place for Hashem. Yes, Hashem is all around us, but it doesn't descend all the way to ground level. Because a purely spiritual being, it's not their domain. Hashemayim shemaim laHashem, va'aretz nasein le'adam. The heavens are Hashem's domain. Yeah, of course he could come out anywhere, but it's like saying the Queen could go anywhere she wants, right? But does she go everywhere?
And also the way I kind of teach it or whatever, in my humble way, is that basically by describing Hashem, by saying omnipotent, all those kind of fun words that everyone likes to use, you're basically limiting Hashem's power. Because by saying, actually, if he is omnipotent, actually that perhaps gives it a limitation when Hashem is transcendent, right? Hashem doesn't have any time and space, right? So by giving human features, yes, that's just for us. Like you're saying, it's kind of just for our understanding. But
that's what the Rambam says. The Rambam says anytime the Torah uses physical descriptions, attributes, when it portions physical attributes to Hashem, it's purely for our understanding. It's not we're limiting Hashem, but our limited understanding and ability to describe Hashem. Yeah. So when we say Hashem is all powerful, it doesn't limit. It's not saying Hashem there's any lack of power at all. Yeah. What we're saying is, but we lack the ability to totally understand an all-powerful being.
Yeah.
We just don't have the vocabulary. We don't have the.
It's the only thing. Yeah, exactly. Words we can only use. We can only use words when obviously Hashem doesn't have words. Like where it says in the Torah the whole time, by the Ber Hashem, Vayom Hashem. Like, kind of, what does that mean? That doesn't mean that. Obviously, in our perspective, I guess, from our, like we think about speaking, obviously it's very different than the communication Hashem did to Moshe, etc.
Right. Again, I just want to come back to the Queen analogy again, because I thought of it further. You think about the Queen, right? Again, we said the Queen could go wherever she wants, right? but she goes to certain places. So, for example, let's think, for example, the Queen goes into the House of Lords, but will not go into the House of Commons. She could, but she doesn't.
I don't blame her.
Huh?
I don't blame her.
Right, because it's not her domain.
Yeah.
It's not. She could. It's Her Majesty's government. It's Her Majesty's Parliament. She could go there. She chooses not to.
Like the Kodesh Kodashim and like the Kodesh Kodashim, perhaps, and
Right,
the rest of
the human beings can't go.
Yeah.
Right, but I think it's more difficult for us to understand why. I think that's what we're struggling here is how can there be places where Hashem doesn't go? If we're saying that Hashem is everywhere, what I'm saying is everywhere. Yeah, again, it's a catch-all phrase, but what it means is theoretically everywhere, but in practice chooses where to go. There are certain places which is not appropriate for Hashem to be. He chooses to limit himself. I mean, the whole concept is this is a Kabbalistic concept, the idea of Tzimtzum, which is that God fills everywhere, all space, and therefore, but there would be no room for us to exist. Right? The only way we can exist is if God Himself chooses to restrict Himself, meaning to make space for us. So Hashem fills everywhere, but leaves some space below 10 Tefachim. And again, it's theoretical. So we don't, when we stand, when you get on a ladder, and I'm not, you don't even have to, 80 centimeters, right? It's less than a meter, right? It's nothing at all. Even I've reached 80 centimeters, yes?
I'm glad you did that joke first.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. When we stand fully upright, are we in some way bumping into Hashem because he's below 10? He's a.
No, I mean that concept's absolutely fine. Look, and we're never truly going to understand this, but to grapple with the statement that says that Hashem does not exist under.
No. Whoa. Okay, you have to careful your language there, because we're not saying it doesn't exist.
Not to be there.
Isn't found. It doesn't dwell. We didn't say it doesn't exist. Lo yarda, we say, so he doesn't descend.
Right, but that can't be true. That can't be true because we've got grass and plants and bushes growing under 10 tefachim. How are they growing without the?
That's not the Shekhinah though. That's not the Shekhinah. Are you talking about a sense of an essence in terms of neshama? You're talking about a spark of Hashem. You're talking about like the essence of Hashem is in everything. That's one thing, but that's not the Shekhinah. That's like, for example, that's like saying an artist, his art, his works will be seen everywhere, but you don't see the artist everywhere.
Interesting.
Hashem's works are everywhere.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
On the ground, below the ground, above ground, but Hashem Himself doesn't descend below to a certain. Do you understand the?
It seems an odd one to be trying to convey and grapple with, because having accepted that the words ultimately are meaningless in trying to describe something that's indescribable, quite why we're trying to describe this. I'm wondering genuinely what it's helping us with. Hashem is everywhere. We can see His works and His miracles everywhere. We hopefully can feel His presence in some places, but yet we're saying we can see what He does, but won't feel the presence of the Shekhinah if we're lying down under 10 tefachim. I mean, in what way does this enhance our understanding of the divine? It
doesn't. We were forced down this alley in order to get to the 10 tefachim measurement. Yeah, and we found ourselves in this philosophical conversation because we were trying to extrapolate a halakhic principle from it of 10 tefachim. Yeah, but I think that we have to make this distinction. That's why I say very carefully. You have to say, look at the top line again. It says, "Le'olam me'olam lo yarda shechina lemata." The divine presence never descends lower than 10 tefachim. That doesn't mean Hashem doesn't exist below 10 tefachim. It doesn't mean you can't see Hashem's works below 10 tefachim, but the divine presence itself isn't below 10 tefachim. Just like the Queen's, insignia, whatever it is seen in places, but she's not seen in those places.
So I guess the question I've got is, what difference does it make if the divine presence is there or not there?
It doesn't. It doesn't. Yeah, it's just to recognize that there are different places, different domains. Yeah, the world was given to us, and ground level is for human beings. But and then 10 above that is where Hashem. That's where it begins. It's where the divine presence can start to be felt. But that's low enough for all of us because, as I said, even I would reach there.
Rabbi, by 10 tefachim, do you mean 10 tefachim above sea level or 10 tefachim above the ground?
But it definitely must be above the ground, because when we talked about Har Sinai, we were saying that he descended onto Har Sinai. And then we said, no, it doesn't mean onto Har Sinai itself literally, because that we consider to be ground level. It means 10 tefachim above that.
But it could mean that it went onto Har Sinai literally, because Har Sinai is a mountain, so it's probably above sea level.
Yes, that's why it can't be. That's why I'm saying that's why it can't be sea level. Because if it was sea level, if we're saying that Hashem has only found 10 tefachim above sea level, then the mountain is clearly way above sea level, and therefore, as soon as Hashem descends onto the mountain, well, he remains above sea level. It wouldn't even be a question. The question is, if we're taking the top of the mountain as considered to be ground level, we said, no, he's not found there. Even on top of the mountain, he's not found. It's always at least 10 tefachim above that. So wherever the surface is, Hashem is 10 above it. Okay?
Okay.
Again, remember, let's come back. Let's maybe try and concretize it a little bit, which is, if we come back to our walls, we said a mechitza, the definition of a mechitza is 10 tefachim high. Once you've got something reaching up 10 tefachim, that creates a natural break between the two. So there's your 10. That's 10 tefachim. So above that is Shekhinah, below that is not Shekhinah. Okay, two different domains.
Yeah, I think the challenge here is you've got a number, you've got a measurement, which is tangible, and you're linking something tangible with something that's very hard to understand, as in Hashem and spirit and that kind of stuff. So I think
we talk about 10 spheres as well. 10 again, there are 10 levels of Shemayim as well. How do you understand that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I see.
That's why I think you can continue to sing that song in good faith and not have to have a caveat, which is, no, Hashem is there, Hashem is really able, actually, but not below 10 tefachim. I don't think you need to spoil the song. It won't scan as well.
I'll be okay in the children's service, thanks.
I think you're okay.
Not until till a minion of children have studied this Masechta.
Yes.
That's why it's Kabbalistic.
I'll leave that with you to disseminate.
That's why it's Kabbalistic, right? A lot of these ideas are very deep and hard to understand and challenging and etc. Not for children, etc.
Right. And even adult ones as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's carry on. So we've seen to accepted that Hashem never descends below 10 tefachim, whatever that means. Now we have to say, what about, one second, the Gemara goes on and says, V'lo alu Moshe, next bit was, V'lo alu Moshe, you see what the cursor is, V'lo alu Moshe ve'Eliyahu l'marom. It just said that did not Moshe and Eliyahu ascend. V'hakasib, surely you've learned in the Pasuk, U'Moshe ala el Elokim. We know that Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Hashem. What does that mean? He went to Shemayim. It must mean above 10 tefachim into Hashem's domain. Says the Gemara, Lemata me'asara. Yes, he did ascend, but remained 10 below where Shemayim is. Says the Gemara, hold on a second. V'hakasiv. But we've got another passage in Malachim base. V'yan Eliyahu b'sara Shemayim. That Eliyahu ascended in like a whirlwind to heaven. It says heaven. Surely it must mean he was in heaven. Says the Gemara, the Mata Me'asara. Even when it uses the word heaven, it means 10 tefachim below heaven. Says the Gemara, one second, another pasuk. It says in Eov, V'akasib. It says about Moshe Rabbeinu in Eov. Me'achaz penei kisei parsas alav anano. He grabbed hold of the front of the divine throne, and Hashem covered him with the cloud. V'amar Rab Tanachum Melamed Shepirash Shakai Meziv Shchinasoi V'anono Alav. What is this? What does that pasuk mean? It means, says the Tanachum, that Hashem spread out the radiance of his presence, and a cloud upon him. So clearly, Moshe Rabbeinu is right up there in Shemayim. The radiance of the divine presence, which is in Shemayim, was spread over him like a covering. Says the Gemara, L'matza me'asara. Still, no, it was still below 10 tefachim.
What I'm struggling with, if I just stand up, my feet are below 10, but my head's above 10.
Yep.
So you say, am I covered? Am I in? Am I out? So your head's in, you can cover me with that height.
Yeah.
Any minute it's going all the way to the ground, your feet can still not be, but your head can be.
Right. Yeah, hold on, but that's not going Hashem descend. Hashem descends to 10 tefachim, and we can be in that domain because our height takes us above 10 tefachim. What we're now saying is that, hold on, it says that Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Shemayim. He went into the 10. He went into the other domain, completely the other domain, out of the human realms and into the divine realms. Says tomorrow, no. He went up. Yes, you're right. He went up high, but he remained 10 tefachim below. So it's like, again, you've been in an airplane, right? You're at 30,000 feet, but you didn't make it to 40,000 feet. So you're 30,000 feet off the ground, but you remained always below 40,000 feet. That's what the Gemara is saying. That even though they ascended that high, they didn't ascend all the way, always remained 10 tefachim below Shemayim itself. Because remember, Shemayim Hashem, the heavens belong to Hashem. So even though the Pesukim seem to suggest that Moshe and Eliyahu ascended to Shemayim, no. Yes, they ascended, but they always remained 10 tefachim below Shemayim itself. And it says in Gemara, Mikol Makom, nevertheless, Me'achaz Pnei Kisei Kasib. But the Apostle, even if you say he remained 10 tefachim below, he was still holding on to the face of the throne. The throne had to be in Shemayim. Moshe Rabbeinu has reached up. At least part of him is going to be in Shemayim. So how can you say he remained 10 tefachim below? So says the Gemara, Ishtabu Bey, Ishtabev Le, Kisei Ad Asara, V'nakat Bey. No, the truth is, the throne itself was lowered down to him until 10 tefachim below, and then he took hold of it. So again, how are you trying to understand this? But the divine throne was lowered 10 tefachim below Shemayim, and that's where Moshe Rabbeinu took hold of it. Yeah, let's just look at the Ritva on that. It says the Ritva. Now, Chez Pnei Kisei Parshay Alav Anani. Haki Itzav Mesechus Shabbos. Gemara Shabbos says Perish. Rabbi Kiva B'Shash Ala Moshe Lamaron. What was going on here? What was happening this time? When Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Shemayim to get the Torah, Amru Malachei Hashares, the administering angels said to God, Ma Enosh Ki Tizkerenu. Who is man that you should even consider him? So Amalei HaKadosh Baruch Hu Moshe. It's a famous Gemara here. It says Hashem says to Moshe, Chazo lehem tshuva. You answer them. You explain why you're allowed up here. So Amalei Moshe Rabbeinu says, Misyare ani. I'm afraid. Shema Yisrafuni behevel shebihem. Moshe Rabbeinu says, I'm scared that they're going to burn me with the fire of their breath. So Amalei, Hashem says to him, Achus b'kisei kavodi. Hashem says to him, take hold of my divine throne and that'll protect you. And then he spread the cloud of the radiance of the Shekhinah over him in order to protect him from the Malachim. Again, a very interesting thing to try and understand. But we we'll still seem to have explained that Moshe Rabbeinu and Eliyahu never acted, although they ascended, they never got actually into Shemayim. They always remained at least 10 tefachim below it. Okay, we'll come back a little bit now to our original discussion. Just move the page down slightly so you can see. It says more here, middle of the line. It says more Bishlama. You see here? Says Gemara, Bishlama Aaron Tisha. Okay, so we've said that 10 tefachim is derived from the Aron and the Kapores, the Aron and its cover. Says Gemara, that makes sense when it comes to the Aron. We know the Aron was 9 tefachim. Dechsiv, as the Apostle in the Shema says, Va'asu Aron atzei shitim, amasayim v'chesi orka. You shall make an Aron made out of cedar wood. Amasayim v'chesi orka, 2.5 in length. V'ama v'chetzi rochba, and 1.5 in width. V'ama v'chetzi komasoi, and 1.5 in height. So the Torah itself is explicit that the height of the Aron Kodesh should be 1.5 amas. We know an amma is 6 tefachim, so 1.5 amas is 9 tefachim. That gives us 9. So we know the Aron is 9. Ela kapores tefach minalan. But how do we know that the cover was a tefach? The Torah doesn't tell us. Doesn't say the dimensions of the Aron of the kapores. So it might be smaller than 1 tefach. It might be bigger than 1 tefach. So how do we know? So says the Gemara, Tani Rabbi Chanina. Rabbi Chanina taught, Kol hakelim she'asa Moshe nasla behen Torah midas arkan u'midas rachman u'midas komasan. Any of the vessels, any of the pieces that were in the Mishkan and the Beis Hamikdash that Moshe made, the Torah gives the dimensions of their length, width, and height. However, kapores midas arka u'midas rachba nitna. When it comes to the cover, the width and the length are given, or the length and the width are given, as we know, because they has to fit the width and the length of the Aron. So it's exactly the same. Amasam v'chetzi, v'ama v'chetzi, 2.5 by 1.5. However, midas komasa lo nitna. However, the measurement of its height is not given. So how do we know it? It says the Gemara, Seyulamad mipachoshish b'kelim. So it's as if the Torah is saying, go and learn from the smallest of all the articles that were in the Beis Hamikdash. Shneimar, as the Apostle says, v'asisa loi miskeres tefach saviv. You shall make a rim or a molding around the edge of 1 tefach. And that brings us back to I'll just stop this. I'll just show you the picture again. And that way you can see it on this picture. One sec. No, there we go. That's quite a good one. Okay. These are pictures from the. Should we see it now? Can you see that now? These are pictures from the Temple Institute. So you see, this is the lid, and going around the lid was like a molding, decorative molding. If there's any other pictures here. No. No. Okay, so the Torah tells us the dimensions of that, which should be a tefach. It says the Gemara, sorry, let's stop this, go back. So we can learn it from there, says the Gemara. Here, 2 lines up from where it gets wide. Malahalan tefach, afkan tefach. So just as the miskeres, this rim was a tefach, so also let's say that let's learn it from there that the lid itself, the kaparis, also was a tefach. It's perfectly reasonable. Yeah, the Torah didn't need to give us the dimensions of the of the lid, because we've got this minimum dimension of this decoration. So you look at Rashi on top of the right hand corner, top right hand side. It's the It's the first of the narrow lines of Rashi, Miskeres. Safa ke'ein livers vavzin. Oh, actually, sorry, it was a rim around the table, the shulchan. It was around the shulchan and not around the aron. We won't waste time finding a picture of that now. But it was around the table, the shulchan that had the lechem upon on it. It had a rim around it. That's as the Torah should be a tefah. We can learn from there. Just that was a tefah, which is the smallest of all dimensions. So also here as well. So says the Gemara. Hold on a second. Why derive it from a decoration? Why not derive it from actually some of the articles themselves, says the Gemara. Let's learn it from the utensils themselves. Let's learn the measurement from the utensils themselves, meaning not the small measurement, but let's say maybe it's something big, something much bigger than that, and say actually the lid is actually something bigger than a tefah. So Gemara answers with a famous principle. Tafasta meruba lo tafasta. Tafasta muat tafasta. Tafasta meruba literally means when you try and seize a large amount, you haven't seized any. If you see something, if you seize a small amount, you've seized something. Look at Rashi to explain. It's a really important Rashi. It's just right at the top of the page here. We're here now. Parallel with the first line of the Gemara. Says Rashi, Tafasta Meruba. Says Rashi, Kol Davar Shemashma'o Meruba Umuat. Anything where you could infer that it could be a large measurement or a small measurement. Im tifshat es hamuat yafa tifshat. If you take hold of the small measurement, then you've taken hold of something well. Because anything less than this is not going to be. And if you then subsequently find that actually no, it should be bigger than this, then you'll just add to it. So meaning, if you accept the smallest measurement, it's not going to be any less than that because there's nothing smaller than that measurement, and therefore you're okay. Because if subsequently you find it should be bigger than that, okay, you just say it's bigger than that. However, you don't have to give anything back. If you've taken only the minimum, then even if you found that you were incorrect by taking that, meaning it should be more, you don't have to give up anything back. However, the imtafasta hamaruba lo tafasta. But if you take more, if you take a larger measurement, then you've actually not taken anything. Why? Shatanire kashakran b'davarecha, because it will appear that you are false in what you say. Why? V'shema hamuat yesh lecha litfos, because perhaps you should have taken the smaller measure. V'ata hirbit litfos chasrulach. And by taking more, you're actually losing out. What's in your hand? You have to reduce it. So if you take 10 and you find out it's meant to be 5, you're going to have to give back 5. And you find actually what you had in hand was completely incorrect. Whereas if you only took 2 and you later find out that it was meant to be 5, then at least you had the 2. At least that was correct. You can always add to it. But having to take away means you had nothing in the first place. When you take a lesser amount, im yosifu tov, if you have to add to it, that's good. V'im lav but if you don't need to, then great. Then what you took in the first place was the right thing to do. Okay. Yeah. Let's. If you just turn over, there's a Tosfos on Hey Omid base. It's the on the right hand side of the page, the middle Tosfos. Tafasta meruba lo tafasta. Says Tosfos. Yeshim afarshim lefishim mida meruba ein la su. So Tosfos explains it in a slightly different way. We don't have the whole Tosfos; it's very long. Just do the first bit. It says Tosfos, if you've got a choice between two measurements, a large measurement and a small measurement, if you say, well, let's take the large measurement, the problem is with that is that there could be no end to it. Because you could say, well, let's just take the largest measurement possible. Let's just keep going until we find the largest possible measurement. That's just not credible. You can't say that. You're forced to lo efshar lilmod ela mipnim sheyicholim likanes the Mishkan. Here, we're struggling to find. We don't know what the size of the kapora should be, the lid should be. We've got two options. Either we take a small measurement and say, you know what, we'll go with that, and if we're wrong, we can always add to it, no problem. Or we can say, let's take the largest measurement possible. So that's not possible here. That's illogical, because if you're going to take the largest measurement, for example, take the largest measurement, which would be, I don't know, the whole length of the Mishkan itself, and say, well, there's a measurement, I don't know, 1,000 amas, whatever it is, 20 amas. And we'll say, well, you know what? There's a measurement. Let's use that measurement. Let's say that the lid of the paroches, the lid of the Aron Kodesh, is 20 amas. So that's ridiculous, because if it was that, you wouldn't be able to get it into the Kodesh Kodashim. It wouldn't fit. So that's just illogical to suggest that. And therefore, what makes more sense is always take the smallest measurement, and then at least you can add to it. Does that make sense? Okay, I'll take that as a yes. So therefore, that's why the Gemara said that we'll learn it from the miskeres, the rim, the decorative edge of the shulchan, because that we know is a tefach. It can't be less than a tefach, and therefore we'll go with that. Says the Gemara. Gemara still challenges it and says, hold on a second. And we go on to the first of the white lines of the Gemara. V'neilef mitzitz. But we have other things we could learn it from. Let's learn it from tzitz. The head plate that the Kohen Gadol used to wear. The Sanya, the taught in a brisa. Tzitz domer kumin tashel zahav. This head plate resembled a golden plate, and it was the thickness of 2 fingers. So this is much less than a tefach. 2 fingers is half a tefach. So here we have another article in the Beis HaMikdash, which has actually got even a smaller measure than the miskeres, the rim. Perhaps we'll go with that. Perhaps we'll say the kapores, the lid, is half a tefach and not a full tefach. So we've only got 9.5 tefachim in total, as we learn. So it's basically as well as mukaf me'ozen la'ozen, carry on the Gemara, second of the white lines, and it stretches from one ear to the other ear. Ukasov alav, base shittim, and written on it are 2 lines of text. First one says Yud Hey Mimala. On the top line were the letters Yud Hey Vav Hey, the 4 letters of Hashem's name. The Kodesh Lamed Milmata, and the words Kodesh Lamed, or the letter Lamed, not the actual word, but it's spelling out here. The Kodesh Le, meaning and holy 2 on the lower line. Okay. Let's have a look if we've got on pictures on the Temple Institute. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. No, I'll just Google it. 1 second. actually a machlokus how exactly it was written. None of these pictures on the internet are very. Oh, actually, this will do. This will do. I think it's not anything better than that. Let's go with this one. Okay. Share. Okay, can you see that? So according to the Gemara, the Hashem's name here, this is not quite accurate. This would have been on top, like here. Hashem's name would have been here, and the words Kodesh Le would have been underneath. So one on top of the other. Yeah. So although it should say Kodesh La Hashem, it was not appropriate to have Hashem's name beneath this other words, and therefore it was put that way. So it's not quite how it's done here. Whereas if you carry on the Gemara, that's part of the reason why they've gone with this picture, middle of the third line, V'amar Rabbi Elazar b'Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Elazar ben Yossi said, Ani ra'isi siyab b'Romi, I saw in Rome, I saw that sits in Rome. I actually saw it. And Rashi says, Ani ra'isi b'Romi, shechnisu le'otze ha'melech. Rabbi Eliezer, but Rabbi Yossi was found favor in the Roman eyes, and he was taken into the royal treasury, and he saw there that sits that they'd taken from the Beis Hamikdash. He says, well, I saw it. He says, Ani Ra'isi b'Romi, because of Allah, written on it was Kodesh Hashem b'shita achas. Says the Gemara, he says, and I saw it written in one line, so almost like we have it. Yeah. I saw it written in one line. So here, there are different ways of looking at it. Look at Tosfos, back to our Gemara, top of the page on the left-hand side. It says Tosfos, Yud Hey Milmala. So the Gemara just said the two letters of Hashem. Actually, we know it had all four letters of Hashem's name. It says Tosfos, Afal Pish Yud Hey Shem Gamur. Even though actually, Yud and Hey on their own are actually one of Hashem's names, a complete name. This isn't the correct name in letters. In Mazkish te Osios, it's not considered if you just mention the two letters. Since by just saying the two letters here, we're not saying the full name of Hashem. V'oid, ahoge Shem ba'osiav, Osiosav, Perish Bakuntus, Rashi explains, Shaduris Osios, Shel Shem ben Abaim Vishtayim. He says the truth is, according to Rashi explains that there's a 42 name of Hashem, 42 letter name of Hashem, which is a name you can't say out loud. But we also are careful not to say these names out loud as well. Even though, according to Rashi, we are not allowed to say the 42 letter name of Hashem out loud, also known as the Tetragrammaton, here, even the 4-letter name of Hashem, we don't say out loud. Okay, and that's why the Gemara just mentions the first 2 letters of it. So it's a side point. Look at the second Tosfos. Kodesh Le Lamed Milmata. So we said it has Hashem's name on top row, Kodesh Hashem on the bottom row. Says Tosfos, this is actually different to Rashi. Yesh Mefarshim Lemata Mamish. Says Tosfos, some say the words Kodesh Le are specifically below Hashem's name. Zeh Lemala Mizeh, one beneath the other. So Hashem's name's on top, in the middle, Kodesh Hashem, Kodesh Le is underneath it. Says Tosfos, V'lo Mistaba. That doesn't make any sense. To aim Zeh Kedera Kriyasoy. To have Hashem Kodesh Le doesn't make any sense, because if you to read it Hashem Kodesh Le, it doesn't mean anything. It's meant to say holy to Hashem, not Hashem holy to. So to say that Hashem's name is on top and Kodesh Le is underneath doesn't make any sense. That's not the way of reading it. And the Yesh Lefarsi says better to explain it. Zeh shlo keneged zeh. Actually, they're slightly offset. They're not corresponding to each other. Kodesh Lamed, B'techila Shita Ha'achrona. The words Kodesh Lamed are actually at the beginning of the second line. The Shem and Hashem's name is Besof Shita Elyona. Hashem's name is at the end of the first line. So you've got it like this. This is Kodesh La, the beginning of the second line. This is Hashem's name. And so when you read it, although this is below this, you are reading it in the right direction. You're reading Kodesh La first and then Hashem. But you've still got Hashem's name above it, which would be the appropriate way of doing it. So says that's how it was written. Yeah? And it would appear, even though Rabbi Eliezer ben Yossi seems to suggest he saw it, how he saw it all in one row, the Gemara just doesn't seem to necessarily accept that. And say, no, he may have seen that, but according to our tradition, that's how it should have been written. So maybe
surely if he saw it, he saw it. I don't quite understand how you can argue against someone that saw something, no?
Right. So I'm saying maybe he saw a replica. And it wasn't the real thing. Wasn't the real one. Yeah, maybe the real one. Huh?
Where he saw it where though?
He saw it in Rome.
Oh, I see. So
the Romans, when they destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, they took a load of the spoils away with them. You know, the famous picture of Titus's arch. Yeah. You know, they even taking away the golden menorah. That according to our tradition, they didn't. Yeah, that was hidden. Yeah, the Aron Kodesh was hidden, the menorah was hidden. Yeah, it's quite possible that the sits also got hidden. So it may not have been
the real McCoy,
the real one. Yeah, it may have been a copy. Yeah, it hadn't been a copy of faith, but so be it. That was still based on our tradition.
So can I understand? So why do we say it was on two? Was Rabbi Eliezer later than the tradition of that had already been established that it was on two lines?
Yeah, according to the Gemara, the way it was produced was it was on two lines. Rabbi Eliezer said, no, he said, I saw it in Rome, and in Rome it was on one line.
Okay.
Yeah, seems to contradict what I seems. So we have two things. We have Masorah, we have our tradition. The tradition is it was written on two lines. Machlokes is exactly how it was written.
Okay.
Both saying it was on two lines. Whereas Rabbi Eliezer is saying, this is how I saw it.
But we stick with the tradition.
The Gemara does. Yeah, the Gemara seems to say, again, we could explain where you may have not seen it correctly. You may have not seen the real one. This is our tradition, and this is what we're going with.
So lack of evidence because it's one eyewitness, I guess.
Yeah. Can't be corroborated. There's no way of verifying it. You know, it didn't say I saw the hallmark. He just said that's how I saw it written. He didn't say this is how I saw these sits that the Kohen Gadol wore. I saw a sits. Anyone could make this. Anyone could make something like that. We're going with the Sorah. Anyway, so hold on. Let's come back to our point now. Our point is that we have one of the Kalim of the Beis HaMikdash that sits, which we know was Shtei Etzbaos, which was 2 finger breadths, which is half a tefach. So perhaps if we're saying always take the smallest measurement, why not take this as the measurement and say that the Aron Kodesh cover, the Kapores, was half a tefach, not 1 tefach, which means that a mechitza is not 10 tefachim. A sukkah wall doesn't have to be 10 tefachim high. It only needs to be 9.5 tefachim. So answers the Gemara. When we go back, I'll just tell you where it is. So the last few words we'll say the Gemara from tonight. It's 5 lines down in the wide lines. No, 4 lines down, apologies. Middle of the line. Danin kli mikli. Says the Gemara, no. When we're trying to compare things, we compare a kli, a vessel, to a vessel. Vein danin kli mitachshis. And we don't derive a vessel from a tachshis, which is a decoration, or as Rashi says, tachshis milvosh la'adam, a piece of clothing. They're 2 different things. Yeah, when you're not comparing like for like. When you wanted to compare, we're talking about trying to compare the lid for the Aron Kodesh, you had to compare it to other vessels, pieces of furniture in the Beis HaMikdash, not to a decorative headpiece that a Kohen Gadol wore. They're not the same. You can't compare the same thing. Okay, and therefore we don't use that as our measurement, and therefore we're still back to using the decorative edging of the shulchan for the measurement. That was a tefach, and therefore this must be a tefach as well. The Gemara we'll stop here, Mr. Hashem. The next we'll see that the Gemara will persist and say no. With other things, therefore we can compare it to that were on the kalim, and they weren't a tefach. Also weren't a tefach. So perhaps we should say it's that as well. So we'll see that next time.